Ladies and gentlemen, let's take Tribunal. We're going to be taking a look at Sniper Elite 3 for the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, and PC. So this is a little behind schedule, to say the least, but unfortunately been extremely busy with graphics card reviews, giveaways, and unfortunately just real life stuff, so things have been a little bit slowed down, but here we are. So I've already done the frame rate thing, but we still need to finish that off at some point. Regardless, this is going to be focused on the quality between all of the different versions. So I've done this as an article as well, and I encourage you to check it out. In the article, there are high-resolution screenshots, some explanations to testing methodology, and a little bit more information than what I could simply squeeze into this video. So, first things first, I'm going to discuss my decision with the whole downsampling thing. I have discussed this in the article, and I've also given a little bit of a disclaimer at the start of this video, but I do want to go into this just in case. It's extremely important to realize that if I had enabled downsampling, it would have been just categorically unfair to the consoles. Even times 2.25, it's just pretty ridiculous of a difference, and it's simply put that you're rendering the game at a higher resolution, you're downsampling it in its pretty simplest form to a, say, 1080p image, which just makes it really unfair. The consoles just cannot compete with that. So I've disabled it for this video, but do know that if you do decide to enable it, then the game just looks even prettier. Testing methodology for all three systems is that they are all recorded at the highest uncompressed rate possible at native 1080p. For the PC, we're using an Intel 4770K, everything is set to stock, a GTX 780 Ti, set to stock, 16GB of RAM, set to stock, Windows 8 installed to a separate hard disk, Windows 8 being on one SSD and this being on a HDD rather, not the triple D there. It's worth remembering that you do not need such a high specification to run this game. Basically, without enabling SSAA, you can easily run this on a mid-range GPU pretty happily, and you will be a lot happier than the than the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One versions. If, on the other hand, you do have a high-spec PC, there's little reason not to at least enable SSAA times 2.25, simply because of the extra shyness that it does afford. It's actually quite profound, to be honest with you. So with all of that said, it's very easy to just say 1080p and that's it. But as we all know, 1080p is not necessarily indicative of what the actual overall quality of the pixels is like on screen. This is the case where the PC version definitely shines above the either next generation console, actually. There are a couple of reasons for this. One of them is texture loading. You'll notice that despite the fact that the PC version does have some ugly texture issues at times, predominantly if you go to a new area, you'll notice that the game kind of loads them in. This happens considerably more in shadow areas, which is a bit odd, but there you have it. But it happens even more on the consoles. In addition to that, level of detail, specifically over distance, can be a bit of a problem. This is also occurring on, for example, when you're looking at shadows on either the console versions, and there's definitely inferior tessellation and lighting and shadow quality. You'll be able to see that, no doubt, throughout the video, as well as some of the images that I've provided in the article help to illustrate this further. Regarding the Xbox One, versus the PlayStation 4, I would say that both versions are using the same type of assets. What I noticed when I was playing around with the PC version and messing about with the different quality settings to try and get an idea of what was going on, is that I personally believe that they're just simply using lower levels of AF for the Xbox One. This is really noticeable in certain areas, like you can tell that the textures just don't appear quite so sharp. And now we have to bring ourselves over to the frame rate concerns. So, despite the fact that the frame rate variance, as I mentioned in the original frame rate video a while back, despite the fact that it's not that much worse than the PlayStation 4 for the most part, unless things get really busy, in which case it can decide to tank a little bit more. The biggest issue is actually when it comes to torn frames. There's a hell of a lot of them on the Xbox One. In fact, sometimes it's actually really noticeable, and it can look kind of ugly, especially if you happen to be really unfortunate and get, say, 2 or 3 torn frames at once, which isn't out of the realms of possibility whatsoever. I don't feel Rebellion did a bad job on the Xbox One, but ironically enough, if they had released it, say, 3 to 6 months later, it might have actually benefited from the June SDK of the Xbox One. Therefore, that extra GPU performance would probably have helped a little bit to maintain a little bit more of a, say, consistent visual aesthetic. I'll quickly talk about the loading times for the PC and consoles. PC loading times are pretty much non-existent, they're just a couple of seconds. Console loading times, oddly enough, from my testing anyway, the PlayStation 4 actually loads quite a bit quicker than the Xbox One. If you want more information on that, you can check out the article, as I'm running out of time a little bit here. Certainly shadows, as I mentioned, shadows and lighting definitely take a hit on the console versions. I would say that the PS4 version does maintain things a little bit more consistently. There is a little bit less texture pop-up on the PS4 version. It's not huge. What version would I recommend buying? To be honest, it has to be the PC. The PC version is cheaper for the most part, assuming you do a little bit of shopping around. And honestly, even a mid-range PC is going to be able to play the game, well, nicer looking. And of course, you can make some concessions. You can say, you know what, I want to run at a lower resolution. You know what, I want to just deal with the higher frame rate. The actual frame rate issue as well comes into play with the Xbox One when it comes to input latency. The PlayStation 4 does suffer input latency as well. It's not quite as bad as the X1. And despite the fact that I wholeheartedly, absolutely bloody awful on control pad, I actually had a friend who regularly plays console games a lot more than I do, and he actually tried out the PC and the Xbox One and the PS4 versions, and he also agrees that, you know what, it's actually harder to play on consoles. There's more latency, and even if you decide to play on a joypad on the PC, it still feels nicer. There's actually less latency. But the Xbox One version, it feels even weirder. Oh, and finally, one little thing that I noticed, although it could just be random occurrence, with the X-ray shots, I have noticed that they tend to be a little more glitchy on consoles. Consistently, I had noticed the body parts were randomly just deciding to completely and utterly, well, I guess the technical term is spaz out. Now, as I said, that could just be random and coincidental, so I don't want to say that the physics are broken on console. It just happens that I noticed it a little bit more on there, so I don't exactly know what the reason behind that was. Regardless, Sniper Elite 3 is pretty impressive on either system. It's definitely a jump ahead of, say, Sniper Elite 2. But if you are looking for the best graphics, the PC version, failing that, the PS4, unless you want to play with like lots of friends, in which case the Xbox One version is fine. It's not like it's bad, it's just that it doesn't quite match up to the technical accomplishments of either the PC or the X1. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.